Hello, everyone, and welcome to Psychology of Learning. My name is Dr. Stern, and I'll be your professor for this semester. To get started, for those of you who don't know me, I want to briefly introduce myself. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. Great place to visit if you've never been. I have a bachelor's in psychology from the University of Tennessee, as well as a master's and PhD in social and developmental psychology from the University of Oklahoma. This is my third year at Cameron University, and I'm having a wonderful time being here and getting to know all of you. My interests include watching football, among other sports, playing a lot of tennis, cooking, reading about food. But then my professional interests involve the psychology of fiction. That's actually what I research. I am not a clinical psychologist or therapist. I am a social and developmental researcher. And what my research focuses on is how fiction, the stories that we read and watch on TV or in movies or play in video games, how those stories impact us, how they change our attitudes, our knowledge about the world, the relationships we have in other people, and so on and so forth. If you're interested in that line of research or research in general, please feel free to reach out and ask me. I do have an active research lab on campus, and I'm always recruiting new research assistants who want to get involved in the process. I would like to get to know you a little bit, and I'd also like you to get to know your classmates. So your first assignment for the semester, as you might have guessed, is going to be to introduce yourselves in Blackboard. You'll see a forum that looks a little bit like this, although I'll show you the more specific one here in a minute. Your first discussion post is not actually going to be due until the second Sunday or June 5th at 11:59 p.m. We'll talk about due dates and times here in a little bit as well. And in addition to introducing yourself and commenting on two classmates' posts, I actually want you to spend some time brainstorming ideas for something called the Behavioral Modification Project, which we'll learn more about here in a minute. Once we get through our general course information, we'll take a peek at our Blackboard page and I'll show you the specific introduction prompt and where to complete the assignment. I will be holding office hours this semester. My office is located in Nance Boyer, room 1041 actually, and I'm happy to meet with you in person during my office hours, on Zoom, email, or over the phone if those times don't work well for you, or if you choose to not meet in person. If you want to know for sure whether I'm going to be in my office, or if you want to meet with me outside of my scheduled office hour times, please send me an email or give me a call, and I'm happy to work with your schedule. Now let's talk a little bit about our course. Psychology of Learning is primarily a deep dive into conditioning. Think back to your general psychology course where you learned about classical and operant conditioning. There's actually more to it than what we learned. And the most interesting things we'll discover as we take a deep dive into these topics are going to include how they help us understand addiction. We're going to talk about observational learning, or learning from watching other people. We're going to learn about what conditioning can teach us about therapy. We're going to talk about spanking or corporal punishment, and we're going to look and see what conditioning can teach us about abnormal psychology, disorders, and things along those lines. So while we will primarily be taking a deep dive into classical and operant conditioning, we're going to spend a lot of time looking at how these principles can help us understand some really fascinating aspects of psychology as a whole. I want to start the semester by giving you some tips on how to do well in the class. And the first one is going to be, of course, to read your textbook. You do have a required text for the course. You can find information about that text in the syllabus or in the bookstore or library. And reading those chapters and taking notes is going to be critical to your success in the class. I also ask that you watch the weekly lecture videos and take notes. I spend a lot of time recording these lecture videos so that you can have a more in-depth experience accessing our content and learning from it. One thing I want to point out is while you're watching these videos, while you're taking notes, write down any questions you may have. And then after you finish the video, feel free to stop by office hours, call me, send me an email, and I'm happy to answer those questions or to talk in more detail about the concepts that are interesting to you. I also want to encourage you, and there will be times where you have to do this in order to successfully complete the discussion posts, but I encourage you to incorporate content, vocabulary terms, concepts, statistics from all of the chapters we're going over while you're completing your discussion posts. Not only will this help you remember the concepts, but it will actually help you form strong connections between your own experiences and what we're learning in class. And then, of course, the biggest tip I can give you is to study the content as we go. As we'll talk about here in a minute, you will have a cumulative final exam, a final exam that covers the entire semester. So it's going to be critical that you stay on top of new content while continuing to review old content every week. So let's take a little bit of a more detailed look into the assignments you'll be completing this semester. You will have 4 exams, 3 multiple choice unit exams that only cover material from that specific unit. I do want to point out quickly here that exam 2 does need to be proctored, but you will be able to use your notes on that proctored exam. And then your final exam is cumulative. Again, that's going to cover content from the entire semester. Exams 1, 3, and the cumulative final will be taken online during a specific period of time as outlined in the syllabus calendar, and you will be able to use your notes or your textbook while you take those as well. However, you are not allowed to use another classmate. Next up, we have your discussion boards. You have discussion boards most weeks, but not every week, 8 weeks out of the class. These discussion boards will be worth 10 points each, and you are required to make an original post and 2 follow-ups. For your original post, I ask that you write a minimum of 150 words and then 50 words for each of your follow-up posts or your comments on other classmates' posts. But more importantly here, I ask that you make a substantial contribution to the discussion. You do need to say more than good point, or I agree with this, or I've had this experience too. Try asking a follow-up question, connecting what your classmates saying to your own discussion boards, or trying to connect it with a different concept we've covered in class. If at any point during the semester you're unsure whether your discussion post meets criteria, feel free to send it to me and I'm happy to look over it. All of your discussion board posts will be due on Sundays at 11:59 p.m. And then we have our big project, your behavioral modification project. This is a multi-part project that includes an observation period, an actual behavioral intervention period, and then an essay. So what you'll do while we're talking throughout the semester in our discussion boards, you're going to identify a behavior of yours that you would like to increase or decrease. Maybe you want to make your bed every morning or eat more vegetables. Maybe you want to watch less Netflix or spend more time reading. You're going to identify one of these behaviors, and then you're going to have an observational period where you apply principles of classical conditioning by observing what prompts you to engage or not engage in that behavior. Then you'll spend 4 days applying operant conditioning, reinforcement or punishment to that behavior to try to increase or decrease it. After that, you'll write a 4 to 5 page double-spaced paper summarizing your experiences. As I'll show you in a minute when we look at Blackboard, I've given you a lecture video to watch on how to write this paper, a template for writing this paper, and a lot of other really detailed instruction. So you should have a lot of guidance going into this project, even if it might seem a little bit frightening right now. I do have a few important course policies that I want to share with you. The first is that no makeup work, that includes exams, discussion boards, and especially the behavioral modification project, can be turned in late unless you are able to document an extreme circumstance, such as illness, a death in the family, so on and so forth. However, you are required to email me within 24 hours of that due date in order to make up the exam, the discussion board, whatever it may be. And then after that, you will only have a week in which to complete the makeup. We'll set a specific date between the two of us when you email. But I also want to say, if you have something come up, email me. It may be something that we can work together to document. Other than extreme circumstances, no late work will be accepted. The last policy I want to mention is that, as with every psychology class, for the most part, we are going to be talking about some potentially sensitive topics in our discussion boards. For example, people might be sharing some behaviors that they want to increase or decrease and various reasons surrounding those. So please be respectful to one another, support one another, encourage one another. The goal here is to make a cooperative and comfortable learning environment for everybody. I have never had a problem with this, and I don't think we'll have a problem with it this semester, but it is important to keep in mind that the words, the tone you use in your discussion board posts, especially your responses to classmates, does have an impact on them. So be nice, be thoughtful, and try to contribute to their learning experience. Now what I'd like to do is take a minute to look at our Blackboard page together. When you open Blackboard, it will actually immediately go to our announcements page. I don't have it set up correctly right now. Let's take a second and fix that so we can all see it. Hopefully this is going to reinforce the importance of looking at announcements for all of us. Okay, let me switch back into student mode. So the first thing you see when you open up our Blackboard will be our announcements. I encourage you to check your announcements at least 3 times a week. I post a lot of announcements. I use them for reminders, important course information, and I really do encourage you to connect your announcements to your email if you have not already done that. Right now you can see that we have proctoring information as an announcement. That's going to be one of the first things you see when our semester starts. After reading announcements, I want you to start the semester by going to the Start Here page, which I'll actually direct you to in this video that will be posted as an announcement. Read through all of these tips for getting started. That should probably be my email. I'll go in and make sure to fix that. You can also read through a little bit of more information about how to navigate Blackboard, some important technology and accessibility things you might need to know during the semester, and so on and so forth. After that, I want you to check out the course syllabus. I'll post our calendar here shortly. Read through in detail this course syllabus. Read every word. There will be important information here. Okay. For example, when you send me an email, please make sure to always include your full name and the class you're taking in the email title so that I can more quickly answer your question and help you. The syllabus will also outline the textbook that you need, all of the assignments we just went over together, extra credit, which is always important, the grade distribution and breakdown, important dates, and so on and so forth. Anytime you have a question about the class, please go check the syllabus first. And if it doesn't answer your question, please feel free to email me after that. The most important thing in the course syllabus, of course, is the course calendar. This has all of our due dates, all of our exam dates, and each topic or reading assignment for each specific week or reading assignments. I encourage you to check this every week, even though I will be posting overviews of what we have going on. After that, you can go to our course content page where you can see things like this first extra credit assignment that we have, our pretest, behavioral modification information. Remember, this is our big project. I encourage you to go ahead and watch the instructional video for this, read through the rubric, read through the instructions, and start preparing for that assignment. Then you'll have our weekly folders. So let's take a look at one of these together. Each week, you can read through the assignments or instructions for that week. You can access our lecture slides as well as our lecture videos. I encourage you to read the chapter each week prior to watching the lecture videos. That tends to reinforce learning better. Once you've done the textbook reading and watched the lecture videos, you have the option of completing a practice quiz for most of the chapters just to help you reinforce, assess your own learning, and so on and so forth. Then you can access the weekly discussion as well as sometimes supplemental material or extra information to help you learn. After that, you have an alternative way to access our discussion board by clicking on the discussion board tab. The first discussion that you'll be completing during week 1 is going to ask you, like I mentioned earlier, to introduce yourself, consider a behavior you would like to do more or less, and discuss that. The second discussion is going to ask you to apply some principles of Pavlovian or classical conditioning. where you're going to identify the different aspects of that conditioning process. And each week we'll ask you to do a similar task. That is all I have for you in our introduction video, but please, if you have any questions about the class, policies that are unclear, anything you'd like to know more about, please, like I mentioned, reach out at any time, stop by office hours, give me a call, send me an email, and I'll be happy to answer. I look forward to working with you this semester and hope you have a great semester.